would you like to know what I have spent a lot of time playing on recently?
Yes.
Well, it's 2025, obviously. So naturally, I am hugely obsessed with the Nintendo 3DS all over again.
You never stopped.
I never stopped, but
I never stopped. It's brilliant.
It is brilliant, but the machine has
here.
basically been sat dormant in its little kind of sarcophagus hard case for a year or so. Because when we both bought our 3DS XLs before, got all excited for a few months, it then kind of just got put to one side and I'd pick it up occasionally, but it's been a while. I think because we really went to town on it for the period we did. Like with anything, you kind of just drift off and you need a break sometimes. But recently I saw news of a new fan translation of a game that I will talk about a bit later, announced on Blue Sky. And that inspired me to dig out the console again, update my custom firmware, see what's what, and basically just to spend more time with what I would describe as the last console to carry any personality whatsoever. And that's why I love it so much. Firstly, I can't remember if I've ever been this specific when we've talked about the 3DS before, but if you own a 3DS, that's an old style, new style, XL, 2D, whatever, dust it off, charge it up, go to 3ds.hacks.guide online and open your world to joy, because the machine is completely dead in every aspect it could be via Nintendo. The eShop's closed, Nintendo don't care, you can't buy games anywhere anymore, but I care, and so I implore everyone to walk through the steps on the web. It's really simple to turn this into your favourite handheld all over again. Just blow it wide open. It's really easy to hack, and homebrew is great. But the machine itself, beyond all that, the interface and the UI of the 3DS is, especially when viewed next to the Switch, just achingly good. Like ignoring the stereoscopic 3D stuff, which I fucking loved. I know you loved as well, but I appreciate can be an acquired taste for some people. Just the machine itself is still such a joy to hold and to look at and engage with. It's not the quickest, it's not the snappiest. When the store was online, it was never like a deluxe race car experience either. But it's captivating in a way that no modern machine, save maybe the Playdate, is, because the music and the sound effects and the customizable themes, of which there are now millions online, freely accessible with a homebrew app titled Anemone, if you want to do a bit more digging. The way you can place badges all over your home screen using characters and icons unlocked in the now long defunct Nintendo Badge Arcade or via homebrew app, GYTB. It all just makes it uniquely yours in a way that I've never seen on another console. Nintendo made a games machine that was just unabashedly meant to be a quirky, cute toy. And as much as now it's great that we've got these utilitarian gameplay machines like the PS5, the Xbox, the Switch, the Steam Deck, whatever, they all have their place, but they don't represent your save games as like a little animated 3D model like the PlayStation 2 did. And they don't offer stupid, unnecessary apps like Everybody Votes or the Weather Channel on the Wii. And they certainly don't stuff themselves with things like Streetpass on the 3DS.
Yeah.
I think I love Streetpass more than some of my extended family or friends. And for anyone who missed out on the 3DS's heyday and don't know what I'm talking about, Streetpass was a service that meant if you walked past someone else who happened to be carrying a 3DS as well as you could meet their me, the little customizable avatar representation of the person, and then use their me in a small suite of Streetpass Plaza games. And for a few years, back in the 2010s, I took my 3DS everywhere in the hope of picking up Streetpass hits. But naturally, over time, the number of people carrying around the handheld dwindled, and Streetpass basically died. But doing a bit of research this time around, I've discovered that NetPass, another homebrew app, exists just to ease this pain.
Amazing.
Because it basically allows you to connect to virtual places once a day. So you say, I want to go to the plaza today. I want to go to the beach today. And then it will serve you Streetpass hits at the end of the day from any other users who have visited the same pretend plaza or beach or cafe or anything else. And it's wonderful because it's meant that in the year of our Lord 2025, I'm now picking up between 10 and 20 hits a day and making incredible progress through some of the insanely good Plaza games that I'd otherwise just written off. There are a lot of Streetpass games now. You know, when the console launched, I think we only had Streetpass Quest and Puzzle Swap. So it was like the soft RPG and the kind of collaborative swapping puzzle pieces, picture-making app. Over time, DLC was sold in waves to bolster that lineup, and there's a huge list of fully fledged titles. I'm not going to list them all, because to be honest, there's some I've never even launched. But this last fortnight, I've been obsessively checking in daily with my collective hits to play Streetpass Fishing specifically. And I'm having an absolute blast. I'm having such a good time. The way this particular game works, depending on your favourite depending on the favourite colours that each user chose when they set up their Mii, each Streetpass visitor will grant you a different type of bait, and then the different bait is used to catch different fish, with the number of Streetpass guests also helping to reel in bigger fish by cutely supporting your character in like a wild Mii mass as they tug at a big catch. The caught fish can then be displayed in virtual aquariums. They can be customised and viewed in beautiful stereoscopic 3D. There are well over 100 insanely well modelled and textured fish to catch. Just
lovely.
So much work has gone in for quite literally no reason. There's different rods to unlock and upgrade. There's in-game achievements to unlock that grant you Streetpass tickets that can then be used to unlock hats and outfits for your Mii. Like, it's just a properly engrossing little game.
Wonderful.
And this is just one of 14 available to play each and every time your console links with another if you want to. Who's to say if NetPass is going to sustain my completing any of these? Because, again, if people stop using it, it stops working. But I've just loved the thrill of, again, seeing the little green LED flash at the top of my console, seeing a handful of international visitors meet me at the Streetpass Plaza gates, and then taking a little wistful trip with them along the road and then out to sea. You know, there's so much more I could say just about Streetpass alone, but there's a lot more I want to cover on the 3DS love in other areas as well. So I'll park that one there, but Streetpass, big thumbs up. Unbeknownst to me, there's been major advancements in the DS side of the 3DS homebrew scene as well over the last few years, because when I last checked in, people had managed to trick the console into behaving like a DSi, like interface and all, using homebrew titled Twilight Menu++, and that enabled games to be launched from your SD cards. You didn't need like a flash card anymore for your DS games. A few years back, compatibility was quite good when I was last sort of picking through it, but not great. But now it seems, firstly, we're basically at 100% of games playing without issue, pretty much. And the same now also goes for DSiWare, which had previously been a sticking point because titles used to have to be manually installed to kind of the internal memory of the 3DS before they could be booted at all. And now you can just bung them in the SD and then off you go. Just boots as if they're normal games. No messing, no fooling, no fiddling about. Most exciting, though, beyond just being able to play anything old, is that enterprising modders have now figured out how to leverage certain bits of the 3DS that the DS shouldn't be able to access. So you can have higher clock speeds to make games perform a bit better. You can have wide top screen pictures, depending on what the game is. It will just expand the viewport. You can have proper analog input via the circle pad. You can use the additional shoulder buttons, all sorts of things. If people tweak it in the right way, it's all on the table. And so I've played now the first 40 or so stars of Mario 64 DS, and it runs in native widescreen. It has a proper analog camera. You can move using the little C-stick nub as well to kind of spin the camera left and right as well. It's bananas. You know, upscaling a DS game via emulation on a PC or a console is child's play. But making it work here is witchcraft because it's not supposed to work. It shouldn't be allowed to do that. The hardware was not built to do it, and yet they figured it out. I know I have lots of other ways to play Mario 64, including a full stereoscopic 3D 60 frames per second port on the 3DS. But there's something very exciting about making a game like 64 DS, which was, different enough to be worth experiencing.
Yeah.
And was always kind of perpetually hamstrung by needing you to play either with a D-pad or the touchscreen approximation of an analog stick. Here it just works. It's a proper game now.
It's brilliant.
And setup for mods like this are a bit more involved than some of the other homebrew I've mentioned today. But if people are interested in playing things like this, or Ridge Racer DS with analog steering, or Star Fox Command with better presentation and better controls, if you send me a message on our Discord, I will gladly help you out, because it's something I think people should experience if they can. Lastly, on my 3DS Odyssey, the game that kicked this whole recent venture off is a visual novel that recently received a long-awaited fan translation. The game is called Time Travelers. It was developed by Level 5 of Fantasy Life and Professor Layton fame, and it was produced by Jiro Ishii, who previously helmed Crystal favourite 9 Hours, 9 Persons, 9 Doors. So that was my real sort of, the thing that inspired me to do this in the first place. Its easiest genre point would be visual novel, but I think that's way too reductive for what this game is trying to do. So the game starts with you observing a time travel experiment gone wrong, kind of like a large Hadron Collider style subatomic experiment rather than a tropey sci-fi guy goes in a booth to get warped back in time. It's a bit more grounded in reality. But very quickly it opens out to multiple characters and their own splintered timelines. And what makes this far more interesting to me than a standard read-along visual novel is that, firstly, the visuals are completely rendered in 3D, fully animated, fully voiced. making it feel really cinematic, even on this teensy tiny 3DS screen. And second, that it gives you a great feeling of control at all times, because the game will sometimes let you dictate the pace of a sequence, with a scene kind of reaching a sensible loop point in an animation, like a character looking out of a car window as they're driving along. So it's waiting for your input to be ready to progress rather than just sort of like barreling you along. And it also will jump between character dialogue being rendered in subtitles on the top screen with narrative text rendered on the bottom. And that kind of bouncing between it, again, it just works really well for the format.
Yeah.
It also has this really clever trick that allows you to pause and read up additional flavor text called tips on hundreds upon hundreds of phrases and proper nouns and places and in-world historical events as the game's progressing. And those tips themselves will sometimes have additional mini video clips or manipulable kind of 3D models, or just loads of kind of things that have a lot of depth and attention to detail to build this world out. On all of that, going back to visuals for the moment, it was this game in particular that made me really conscious that the 3DS may have been the last console that had a recognizable visual aesthetic as well as personality. Because the Switch, for example, is not as powerful as other current gen machines, but games still generally look the same. Like even a smeary port like The Outer Worlds was still recognizably The Outer Worlds, just on low settings. But everything on the 3DS was tangibly different because it had no anti-aliasing. So everything kind of had like a very specific jagged edge to it. Because artists were always trying to consider how to present and frame a 3D image, even if people were not using the 3D. And the much lower resolution meant that whilst most 3D models were very high in like a polygonal standpoint, textures were stripped back in a very particular way that felt specific to the 3DS, because there was little point in presenting an HD texture on a 240p screen. So it's like something about that mix made them look like a 3DS game, whether it was a first-party Nintendo game or a third-party kind of port from something else. Anyway, Time Travelers. The rhythm of gameplay tends to be you play through a scene with character A, for example, you reach what the game calls a time stop, which usually aligns with a task being failed, like a detective lead being lost or a character getting injured or dying or something like that. You then navigate to a timeline viewer. You try to either find a point along character A's storyline, where a choice could have progressed the story in a different, more favourable direction, or a point on a different character's timeline, so character B, C, D, whatever, where their path may intersect the first storyline to influence the outcome for both parties. And it's a really smart way of making things, again, the player have a lot more control over what's going on, or at least feel like you are, because a story gets to a point where it can't go any further. You then spend time sort of figuring out the puzzle of, well, what have I noticed happening in another scene that might overlap this one I've just been involved in? And it's a really cool way of making essentially a text story have a lot more to it. The fan translation, I think, is really, really good as well for all this. Like it's spent, I think, 8 years in the making. It's very polished. I can't imagine trying to play this sort of thing via a machine translation, because it needs you to really kind of invest yourself in these characters and what's going on to appreciate the whole experience. And the team's just done such a good job at maintaining personality and heart of each disparate protagonist. I'm probably 4 hours in now. I'm looking forward to seeing how wider stories start to overlap more and start connecting more clearly back to the intro scene, the kind of the time travel beginning of everything. But it's really good stuff. The group responsible for the patch is called Fan Translators International. And if anyone thinks this game sounds interesting, I'd recommend doing a little search online for more info, because it's absolutely worth a play if you have a 3DS and a bit of time to get things up and running. So, big deep breath. There we go. A few reasons why the 3DS is great. Just brilliant. In fact, even in 2025, I love the 3DS, and I love all the enterprising hobbyists who are making this stuff tick even today, because every prong of what I've just said I enjoy has relied on the aftermarket support of just people who love it as much as me. But I'm